thank you all for joining me for another edition of our Operational Reality with Rocco Million Live on my Facebook group, Nonpartisans for Progress. If you haven't already, please join and follow the page and group Nonpartisans for Progress. Help me make it a revolutionary voice to educate and empower the public so that we can ultimately collectively force our socially owned government to satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare and domestic tranquility. So that's our purpose. That's my mission. Today, however, I'm going to be focusing on specifically controlled opposition and the Russian narrative. I'm going to be focusing on the Russian narrative and controlled opposition because so many people just don't understand this, and we get it wrong. When we get this wrong, we can't win. We're killing our own chances of a progressive movement, of a better society, because we don't want to take the time to learn the fundamentals. We don't want to take the time to apply logic, to look up research, to look up academic papers. So we have to. We are the revolution. It's not just a hashtag. It's a reality that has to be. People like you and me, we have to stand up wherever we're at, and we have to interject the simple logic of our actual operational reality wherever it's needed, whenever it's needed, to destroy the mainstream lies and narratives and myths and legends that were specifically designed to keep us divided and fighting against our own public purpose. So that means whether you're at the barber shop, on the city bus, wherever, PTA meeting, when you hear people punching down and talking about lazy poor people, lazy unemployed, people on food stamps, you have a civic and moral duty. If you're a progressive, if you want progress, to, interject the simple logic of our actual operational reality, how things actually work in reality, to destroy those lies and scare tactics and myths and legends and rationalizations, destroy the delusions that are based in fantasy, known as our neoliberal status quo. That's our obligation. I'm nobody special. I'm a citizen. I'm a disabled veteran. I'm also just a high school dropout. All right. I did take some college classes also, and I self-educated, and I'm street smart, but this is our civic duty. And if you could only participate in our democracy, if you were an expert or if you're a PhD, not too many people would have a chance to participate in democracy. That wouldn't be no kind of democracy at all. So every single person has to participate in our democracy. We can't blame the ruling class. We can't blame government. This is us. This is on us collectively. We allow our socially owned government, who is mandated by the Constitution to mint and tax for the public purpose and common defense thereof, to ensure domestic tranquility. We allow that socially owned government to work for the private profits of the 1% at everybody else's expense. We allow them collectively because too many believe the lies and scare tactics of the mainstream that were specifically designed to keep us divided and fighting against our own interests. Controlled opposition is another way. All right. And the Russian narrative and Trump is a perfect example of how they keep us divided, how they keep us fighting against each other at the bottom, because our class interests at the bottom are the same. I don't care if you're a Trumpy or a Hillbot or a burner or a Marxist, your class interests at the bottom are the same. You want progress. You want your basic needs met. You want to enjoy life. You want to be comfortable in life. You want domestic tranquility. So the ruling class know that, and they know naturally, Trumpies and Hillbots have more in common than, Trump or Hillary than they do with Trump or Hillary. So they have to figure out ways to keep us divided artificially at the bottom. They do this with race. They do it with the controlled opposition of the Democratic versus Republican divide. All right. They somehow act like, there's somehow a difference. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. The story goes that The Republican Party is different than the Democratic Party, and it's just nonsense. They are both right-wing neoliberals who put profit over people in society. The Democrats are a little bit softer on social issues, as long as they don't affect the bottom line. Democrats will proudly tell you that they are all for free market capitalism. They brag about it, and they shun the word socialism, and they shun public purpose spending, public purpose initiatives. So anyway, the mainstream wants us that may subvert our democracy and may subvert our public purpose at some time in the future. All right, but sorry, we're out of fucks to give over here. We live at the bottom of society, in the bottom income distribution. The majority of Americans live under economic and police terror every day already, because of American oligarchs. Forget Russian oligarchs. Forget Trump. From the 70s, Americans have been living under a class war inflicted by our government and the owning class on the majority of Americans. And this isn't my opinion. This is a fact, and it's well documented. You go back and look. Every president from the 70s, Democrat or Republican, has targeted unemployment and forced millions of people to be unemployed and poor at a time when our community was crumbling and needing work that's essential for the general welfare and domestic tranquility. Every president engaged in this. That's neoliberalism, privatizing the public space, making essential public goods private and for profit, and therefore incapable of meeting everybody's needs. So, inefficient, and it's inhumane. It's artificial scarcity that kills just like bullets, and nobody even blinks an eye at this stuff. It's taught to us in college. When I took a college class, macroeconomics class, they taught me this, that, we target 5%, and, we need to do that for some reason because people at the bottom, they need to switch jobs and they need room to, I don't know, but it was all BS, but I didn't even question it. I got an A in the class. I didn't even question this though. I bought right into it, and it was only after I really started to think about it that I understand that this was systemic abuse. And, people want to focus on personal responsibility. Personal responsibility cannot fix this. This is targeting unemployment. So even if every single worker had the best job skills and every single worker had the most motivation to work and the most personal responsibility, because our government targets 5% unemployment, we would still be forcing millions to be unemployed and poor at a time when our government, when our communities are crumbling across America in need of work that's essential to the general welfare. So that's still artificial scarcity that kills just like bullets. And it can't be solved by personal responsibility. Yet people are quick to punch down and say, unemployed people are lazy, people on welfare are moochers. The fact is they're ignoring glaring systemic abuses. They are living in a fantasy of denial, to rationalize away systemic abuses and the brutality of our reality, and we can't let them get away with that. We can't, because even good people do this. They don't realize it. We can't let them. We have to, destroy those delusions with simple logic from our operational reality. And we have to force these people to deal with the brutality of our reality, to deal with the suffering and death that goes along as a result of systemic abuse. When you force millions of people to be unemployed and poor by targeting 5% unemployment, you're driving everybody's wages down. Everybody's working conditions go down too. Because now the boss don't have to give you a raise. They have millions of people outside. They're so desperate, they'll do your job for starvation wages under horrible conditions. This is how the government fosters starvation wage environments. It's how they transferred a bigger share of our nation's GDP, our nation's wealth, to the top 1% from the 70s. Well, really diminishing the 99%'s purchasing power big time. Our wages have been stagnant from the 70s, while our productivity and our cost of living and their corporate profits are all at record highs. And it's not on accident. It's class warfare. It's wage suppression. Our government keeps a buffer stock of unemployed for capital to use as a weapon to wage war on labor, driving everybody's wages down, everybody's working conditions down. And because, when you're getting starvation wages, now you don't have the disposable income you need to survive. So you're forced into private credit cards for milk and eggs, credit for education, healthcare, credit for transportation, housing, everything. And because private credit always dries up, that always leads to booms, busts, and bailouts. And government must move back in to a huge deficit position anyway to bail out the rich. That's neoliberalism. That's what our American oligarchs and our public servants have been engaged in from the 70s. And yet I'm supposed to be afraid of Russian oligarchs and Trump? Come on, this is insanity. Either way, I don't care if it's Russia and Trump subverting our democracy and our public purpose, or if it's, Obama and our American oligarchs. Either way, I'm living under economic terror. Either way, I live under police terror every day through no fault of my own. Everybody does, whether you realize it or not. And this is unacceptable. But yet we all collectively accept it because people refuse to talk about it. People don't want to be socially ostracized. They don't want to be seen as a radical, a communist, a socialist. Yet they'll call themselves Christians. You get it? This is what cognitive dissonance is, people. Again, a great example to point out what cognitive dissonance actually is. The two conflicting ideas that we believe at the same time. We don't want to understand how they actually conflict. I didn't even put it on there. But, and so Jesus was a socialist revolutionary. In reality, he fed the masses. He hung out with criminals. He hung out with prostitutes and lepers, the disenfranchised. He spoke out against greed, which is what capitalism is. He flipped tables in the temple. Yeah, in America, they think socialism is somehow fascist, or communism is fascism, even though it's completely the opposite. Socialism and communism are left-wing ideologies. All right, fascism is a right-wing ideology. Fascism denotes when our socially owned government works for the private purpose over the public purpose. That's fascism, in essence. And yet in America, though, people will think this stuff. They'll think, oh, we can't do that. That's socialism. Well, we don't want to be dependent on government. We'll lose all our rights. No, these are all the lies that we're being told. Just like the Trump and Russian narrative. Who cares? First of all, the only reason we got Trump is because the DNC would rather lose to right-wing Republicans like Trump over winning with New Deal progressives like Bernie. This is a fact. This isn't my opinion. Again, this is well documented, and we can go through all of it if you don't believe me. The DNC fraud lawsuit that followed, all of this stuff. But in this meme, it speaks to that. So let me put the, oh man, I just dropped it. All right, hold on. This meme speaks to this, why we actually have Trump, and why, the lesser evil is not going to help us, and why the lesser evil is not going to solve anything. That's how we got Trump to begin with, So if you look at this meme of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the brilliant, very popular upcomer who just unseated a Democratic incumbent who was slated to be the next head of the DNC. She took him down with ease because she represented the people, with not socialism as the mainstream media will try to demonize her with, but just simply representing our Constitution and having policies that reflect the mandates and the guarantees in our Constitution. And the DNC, they hate that. They hate New Deal progressives. These are neoliberals. They call themselves that. People like Bill Clinton called themselves a new Democrat with pride. All right, a neoliberal. And neoliberals from the 70s teamed up, Democrats and Republicans, to kill the full employment policies of the New Deal. That ushered in our right-wing neoliberal era, where both parties, target 5% unemployment, to starve our economy of public spending, reducing deficits to force us all into private credit, fostering starvation wages to force us into private credit just to consume production and survive. That's the neoliberal way, to privatize the public space, deregulate everything, and they hate New Deal progressives. All right. And so we see it, whether you're looking at the 2016 election primary with Bernie and Hillary, you had a progressive populist in Bernie Sanders, and he was a truly grassroots candidate, and he beat Trump by huge margins, double digits in head-to-head matchups. And, and he represented labor. Truly, he represented the public purpose. And yet the DNC, cheated him, and they, went over him, and they chose a hated right-wing establishment candidate in Hillary, to instead go up against Trump. If the DNC truly represented the public purpose in labor, they would have ran the best chance, at beating Trump. They would have ran the person. They ran the hated right-wing candidate who mocked us and mocked our progressive ideas, mocked our progressive agenda in debates on national TV, called our progressive agenda pie in the sky. And how are you going to pay for it? Because the Democratic Party, they don't represent the people. Just like the Republicans, they represent the big money interests, the owning class, the capitalist class, whatever you want to call them, the ruling class. It's the neoliberal duopoly. We will not beat this duopoly by voting for corporatists. I don't care what they call themselves. That's why my group is called Nonpartisans for Progress, because I don't care about partisan BS. All right, I care about reality. How does our society and economy function in reality? Who cares about ideology? No, I'm not talking about socialism. This is our Constitution. Again, we need where government satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare and domestic tranquility. Essential public goods like top-notch healthcare and education for all. That's just a common sense thing. So that's government's job, because if you make it private and for profit, it's incapable of meeting everybody's needs. And then you end up with horrible health care and education for the majority of people. And you end up with stupid and uneducated populations, diseased populations, miserable populations, sick populations that cannot produce our needs of tomorrow. And you cannot ensure domestic tranquility like that. And so, but yet that's what they want. These neoliberals want to privatize our public space. You saw it with Clinton privatizing the prison systems, privatizing justice, the drug war, for-profit drug war, cutting welfare. You saw it with Obama, perfectly okay with, having essential public good like healthcare be for-profit, private, and incapable of meeting everybody's base needs. He was fine with it, with Obamacare, the insurance giveaway. And that decision killed millions. Literally, millions of people suffered and died because of these decisions. This isn't just an academic exercise here, folks. This is our reality. This is our life. These are people's lives. Our friends and family are dying of preventable, treatable illness because they don't have cash. We are dying of poisoned water, poisoned air, poisoned food because of for-profit energy, because our government is privatizing energy to make profit for the 1%. And we're allowing them to use fossil fuels and deplete our natural resources and poison us in the process. This is reality. And if we don't stop it, nobody will. And, Do you want to leave your future worse off to your children? I mean, because I don't. I can't do that. I have to at least fight back by doing what I'm doing and speaking out, and using the simple logic of our operational reality to, destroy these silly freaking myths and legends and lies and scare tactics. That's how we're going to deal with this. That's how we're going to unite. You know. But anyway, yeah, you see. So this meme says, "Wake up." Crawley, who lost the primary to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, will stay on the ballot to split the Democrats' votes and to enable a Republican to win. For the Democrats, winning Republicans is more acceptable than allowing a progressive to win. Wake up. And so you see, even after the 2016 election and the blatant fraud and right-wing fascism of the primary and the consequences, Trump, the DNC has learned nothing. All right. They have shunned Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at every step of the way. All right. They are giving her the treatment. The mainstream media are attacking her, and really they have no leg to stand on at all. But it's a great way to see that, if the Democrats truly represented labor, then they would be embracing an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They would be embracing democratic socialism. They would be embracing a federally guaranteed living wage job for everyone who wants one, to maximize our productive capacity, rebuilding our crumbling communities in green, sustainable ways to meet everybody's base needs, raising everybody's standard of living without raising taxes, without making cuts. Okay, forget pay go. It's another example of a democratic, right-wing neoliberal status quo. When the Democrats had control of Congress, guess what? Nancy Pelosi instituted pay go, where they insisted that only public purpose spending be revenue neutral and be paid for and have revenue coming in from somewhere. But only for public purpose spending. Endless war, we didn't have to figure that one out. That one, yeah, we know Congress has the power to purse. But they'll inflict this pay go, and they're supposed to be the Democrats. They're supposed to be the ones on our side. Once upon a time, FDR was a Democrat, a democratic socialist who fought for labor and the bottom income distribution. We have drifted so far right that even basic common sense and the bare minimum and decency is radical. People look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie as being radicals, and not understanding economics when nothing could be further from the truth. But anyway, yeah, Democrats, they don't represent us. They don't represent the progressive New Deal, the Green New Deal featuring a federally guaranteed living wage job. All right. They represent targeting unemployment, like our neoliberal status represents starving our economy of public spending. All right. With reducing deficits. All right, privatizing the public space, making essential public goods private and for profit, incapable of meeting people's needs, making our world a dog-eat-dog world. All right, making the majority of Americans live a precarious existence. That's what neoliberalism does. This is the end result. This is the wage stagnation, folks. I'm going to put this one up too. This is the wage stagnation that results from this. Did I freeze up already? You know what? If I'm still on and everybody could see me, can someone please tell me? All right, because I'm going to be going off pretty soon. I don't want this to be too long, but it looked like I was frozen. So anyway, this is the wage stagnation that results from our right-wing neoliberal status quo. And I'm going to put it on so everyone can see it. The Great Prosperity, they're talking about from 1947 to 79. But really, if you look at the chart, it's from 47 to about 73. That's when our production and our wages stopped rising together. Okay, so before that time, we were under the New Deal, the full employment policies of the New Deal, and wages did go up with productivity. And this was the great prosperity. This is when kids got really good jobs straight out of high school, and they could raise a whole family on that one income with a parent at home, their spouse at home. This built up the family unit, strengthened the family unit, made the American dream. It made America the industrial, it made America the number one superpower in the world. And then when you see in the 70s, this right-wing neoliberalism caught on, and both parties bit into it. Milton Friedman's Chicago School of Economics. This is where the interests of capital invested heavily into the university's economics department. Whole economics departments were devoted to free market capitalism, and they ostracized Marx and other economic theories. And other heterodox economics theories were all ostracized and shunned, and only free market capitalism was allowed to be studied. And that's what neoliberalism is. It's a radical form of that free market, where we privatize the public space and deregulate everything. And like I said, when we keep that buffer stock of unemployment, when we're targeting 5% unemployment, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican targeting 5% unemployment. When you do that, you're starving the economy of public spending. All right. And you're keeping that buffer stock of unemployed for the capitalist class to use as a weapon to drive our wages down. And this is the wage suppression that happens. This drives a bigger share of our nation's wealth, our GDP, to the top 1% and a smaller share to 99%. This diminished our purchasing power in the 99%. So when people talk about inflation, but inflation isn't inflation. It's not inflation that's hurting us. It's deflation. It's wage suppression. It's class warfare. We haven't had inflation for a long time. We haven't even been able to hit our inflation target in many years. So this is the result. And what this means, this chart is representing a pay gap, and it's representing a spending gap then, because when you have a pay gap, people are getting paid less. You have huge inequality, wealth inequality, income inequality. That means the majority of Americans, their wages are not going up with productivity. The majority of Americans are now not going to have disposable income to spend and consume production and survive. So we're forced into private credit, just like the neoliberals want, because this is how they suck our wealth. This is, the finance is not the real economy. Don't really add production value. It instead extracts wealth in the form of economic rents. So that's what they want there. They want us all forced into private credit. And this is how they do it. And we have to understand this. This is our status quo. This is not okay. We have to keep talking about this every day. The duopoly, they preferred to lose to Trump instead over winning with a New Deal progressive like Bernie. Otherwise, they would have ran Bernie over the hated right-wing Hillary, who couldn't even fill a school gymnasium. And Bernie had huge crowds following him everywhere. He was the progressive grassroots darling. He beat Trump in huge margins, double digits. And yet they want us to be so hysterical, though, right now, and so scared of Russia and Trump subverting our democracy, that we'll forget about our reality, from the 70s, and we'll vote for the lesser evil with a blue wave who will simply just work with our American oligarchs to subvert our democracy and public purpose as they have from the 70s anyway. That's the name of the game. That's what controlled opposition is all about. They didn't want Bernie in the game because he represents the public purpose. With Hillary in the game, now they know their fascist private purpose agenda will be protected, it's ensured, because both Hillary and Trump represent that fascist private purpose agenda. They both like to privatize the public space. Like I said, Clinton called our progressive policy agenda pie in the sky. She didn't think that healthcare should be free for all. She didn't think that education should be free for all. She didn't disagree with fossil fuels. She didn't. She was for fracking. They're for the drug war. These people are for private prisons. If these are our enemies, if these are our friends, we don't need enemies, guys. And again, if you're okay, like I said, you don't have to take my word for it. If you look up the DNC fraud lawsuit, the DNC, after they cheated Bernie in the fraud lawsuit, they admitted in open court that they're allowed to do that. They can't be guilty of fraud because they have no binding obligation to even follow their corporate charter. They have no obligation to the public purpose. They have no obligation to let their own members, us, democratically choose who wins their own elections. So they can't be guilty of fraud. They told us that. If we're okay with that kind of right-wing fascism, why are we opposing Trump in the first place, guys? All right, this is how they get good people, even good people, well-meaning people, to be counterproductive to our own progress. This is how they do it. It's not, we got to understand that we cannot vote for corporatists. We can only support New Deal progressives wherever they are. All right. And I don't care if they're in the Democratic Party, I'll still vote for them, but I won't vote for a corporatist no matter where they're at. Shit, I'll vote for a Republican like Mike Norman. I don't care about the party. I'm a non-partisan. I focus on reality. I care about the Constitution and our social contract, and I care about the public purpose and domestic tranquility. And you should too. We should all want to leave our kids a future that's better, not worse. The private sector is not more efficient than government, and so don't be afraid of Russia, and don't be afraid of Russian oligarchs. You need to worry about our American oligarchs and our public servants who, on a bipartisan basis, have worked to subvert our democracy and public purpose from the 70s. That's the real problem that this controlled opposition distracts us from. That's why it's so dangerous. Because if we move and we get Trump and all Republicans out of office, we have a blue wave of neoliberal right-wing Democrats, nothing will change. Look at when Bush was in office to when Obama was in office. Things got worse, not better, every step of the way, in regards with healthcare, in regards with for-profit imperialism, in regards to the drug war. Things kept getting worse and worse and worse. It didn't matter. So if you truly want progress, we have to look at this stuff, and we have to admit these hard truths, and we have to make other people, admit them and deal with our reality, deal with the brutality of our reality. We can't let them ignore and rationalize away systemic abuses that cause more suffering and death than guns and drugs combined. We can't do that. We can't look the other way while atrocities are being committed. That's not patriotic. We have to, we have all the power collectively. That's why I'll still vote for a Dem though today. As long as they are New Deal Democrats, we need to represent them regardless. And so the fact is I know the DNC is corrupt. I know that. And I know that they will rig elections. I know that. But if we have a majority of people show up to the polls and everybody, overwhelmingly is voting for one person, it doesn't matter. Even the ruling class, no ruling class would be so reckless as to, maybe to instigate revolution. If you so blatantly go against the majority, that's what is the catalyst for revolution in reality. And if you look all through history, every working class gain we got was got by collectively forcing the ruling class to meet the public purpose. And it was done with well less than a majority, because the ruling class will never, they don't want a majority of support to unite, because then they know that, once if the majority understood our reality, that government could always make dollars from thin air by law to, maximize our productive capacity and meet everybody's base needs for free, then they know that, the majority would force our socially owned government to do that, to satisfy our constitutional mandate to the public purpose. And so they don't want that. So, if we had a movement that united for the public purpose and we started demanding a federal job guarantee, demanding, everybody's base needs be met, the ruling class would acquiesce. They would break long before a majority united, because they wouldn't want the majority to unite for this kind of a cause. Because once a majority unites, they're done. Because you think about this would change our whole collective mindset. It would change the whole national narrative. It would change the whole national narrative and mindset. All right. This is you imagine a federally guaranteed living wage job program. This is a democratic means of production that's capable of increasing the production of just about anything we need for the general welfare, so we can meet everybody's base needs. So this is a way, and once people start to see government producing all these socially valuable jobs and doing its job and providing for the general welfare in a much more effective and efficient way than the private sector, than the for-profit markets, then, the collective mindset will start to change. People will start to trust government more. And then when productions do exist or come up in regards to private sector production, say with artificial intelligence or whatever, then the majority of Americans would have way less hesitation in seizing the means of production, the physical means of production for the general welfare, instead of being for profit. So the ruling class would never want that to happen, so they would much rather just give in to our demands now, instead of having a whole the majority unite in solidarity in this radical way, in opposition to such horrible class warfare, because that would spell their end. So collectively, we have all the power united. People say, well, why do you say that, Rocco? Because that'll never happen in reality. I say it because it's an operational fact. And we have to start from a foundation of truth, or else all of our assumptions and solutions will be wrong. So, if we start off thinking that people are collective, that we're powerless and the government is impotent and financially broke and impotent to solve anything, then all of our solutions are going to be flawed. All of our assumptions are going to be flawed. All our solutions are wrong because we're starting from a false premise. So we have to understand we collectively have all the power, collectively, always. We always socially own our government. Even right now, our government is a fascist, corrupt body that actively engages in class warfare, economic terror, and police terror on the people. We still socially own our government. We still collectively allow that fascism to happen, because the reality is, the operational fact is that we can all unite in solidarity tomorrow and stay home from work for one day, and watch America grind to a halt without ever firing a shot or breaking a law. That's an operational fact. Okay, we could go back to work the very next day. So it's very low risk, very high reward. Anybody could take a day off of work to save America. And it's high reward because now we've demonstrated our ability to organize and shut shit down. So now we can simply just leverage that capability, just the capability. We can just leverage that and get any demands met, and again, you may say that's far-fetched, but that's how every working class gain throughout history has been got. The ruling class has never just given us justice out of the kindness of their heart. We have always had to rise up and collectively force the issue, whether you're talking about the full employment policies of the New Deal, where we went from the Great Depression to the number one world superpower in the world with the New Deal and deficit spending to invest in our society and productive capacity. That was with people power. The ruling class didn't want FDR 4 times in a row. They didn't want the New Deal. We forced it. Whether you're talking about child labor laws or antitrust laws or the EPA. We forced it collectively. You know, this is our reality, and it's not far fetched. It's a reality. We can do this. We've just been lied to, and we've been beat down, and we're starving. And when so it's going to be an uphill battle. But thankfully, we don't fight because we know we're going to win. We fight because we refuse to leave our kids a future that's worse off without at least standing up and speaking this truth, fighting back, and using the simple logic of our operational reality to speak truth to power, to destroy the lies and scare tactics, to try and unite the working class. Because I couldn't live with myself being part of the problem. And if you're silent, then you're complicit. So you're part of the problem. You can't ignore systemic abuses. That you're part of the problem if you do that. Even people like my mom, I have to tell them. She says, "Oh, this makes me sick to think about." Think about happy thoughts. Well, if somebody was taking a Jew out in the middle of the street every day and blowing his brains out, every day they did this. And so I said, "Mom, man, dang, every day they're taking this guy out in the middle of the street. We got to figure out a way to stop this and save that guy from getting his head blown off." And she would say to me, "Oh, Rock, I don't even want to think about it. It makes me sick." That would be the same thing. You would see how crazy that would be at that point, to look the other way, because there's a person getting his head blown off every day, a different person in the middle of the street. And if we ignore that and say nothing and don't organize and devise a way to stop that, then more people are going to die needlessly because we don't want to feel upset. We don't want to be sick to our stomach. That's cognitive dissonance. You're finding out with simple logic that your previously held positions and beliefs are not only wrong, but they're counterproductive and they're evil. So that hurts. Some people have a violent reaction. People want to punch me in the mouth when I tell them this stuff, or they get sick to their stomach and they say they don't want to talk about it. Think about happier thoughts. But, that's how Nazi Germany happens, literally. And it's not hyperbolic to say that. This is reality. This needs to be said. So as you see this meme here, this is one of my favorites. And it says, this guy said it way back then, our operational reality. It's just simple logic. It doesn't take a PhD or an expert to understand this. But the workers if the workers are organized, all they have to do is put their hands in their pockets and they have got the capitalist class whooped. All right. That is an operational fact. The few live off the labor of the majority. All right. So if you don't produce, then the few can't live. They can't rule. There's no society to rule. All right. We can always collectively force our government to do anything. So we could collectively force our government to mint dollars from thin air to buy up all unemployment with a federally guaranteed living wage job program for everyone who wants one, to meet everyone's base needs, raise everyone's standard of living. We don't got to raise taxes. We don't got to cut defense. We don't got to end the Fed. We don't even got to fix rigged elections. We simply got to unite in solidarity and force the issue. We have to engage in massive scale civil disobedience. All right. And not just, staying home from work. I mean, that would be the best option. Getting a majority to stay home from work, or at least a critical mass in certain sectors, but not even just that. Imagine 5 million people united in solidarity occupying Congress. It would really be occupying Washington, D.C., and it would stop all business in D.C. 5 million people sitting down, occupying Congress. What would they do? There's not enough jail cells or police in the world. And if they start getting violent, that would the rest of the country shots and kill people like they did on the strike lines back during the New Deal and the Great Depression. That shit won't fly in today's day and age. And back then it fired up the public. Right now with media and social media, and that would unite the world against the ruling class. They would never dare. They would, this is how we force change collectively. So I also want to show this real quick before I end this, because this is some of the things that we have to combat. This is about a meme that is talking about our duopoly, and it says the oligarchs have broken our electoral process. I can't really read it, and our government offshored our jobs, shifted its tax burden to you and me with debt, set up half of Americans to live in abject poverty, made 30% more of us the working poor, and then they laugh at us for voting as they rig the system, using the DNC and GOP to rig the system. Screws us all because they have planned it that way. This is by design. They planned it that way. Their greed is out of hand and will kill us if we do not end their duopoly. Green enter. But actually, the Greens, they use the same neoliberal economics as the duopoly, too. It's sad, but they just recently rejected all of our policy proposals from the great the great thinkers of our time, like Dr. Joe Firestone and Dr. Fidel Kaboub. The Green Party just rejected all of them. They still have in their national platform an amendment to balance the federal budget. Well, guess what? You can't balance the federal budget and have a federal job guarantee. You can't balance the federal budget and have a Green New Deal. So this is how even good intentioned people, even socialists, they engage in neoliberal economics of the duopoly, and they are counterproductive to progress. This is why we got to talk about this. Specifically, when it's talking about the broken electoral system, they bought our government and offshored our jobs. And this is another scare tactic we should really talk about real quick, because they bought the politicians, but the fact that they have to buy politicians proves the lever of power is government. It's not the rich. It's not the big money interests, or else they wouldn't have to bribe the government. But the fact that they do have to bribe the government means the lever of power is government. And that's a key thing, and I'll get to it in a minute. I'll get to it now. They bribe the government, and that's a key thing, because what it means is the lever of power is government. And so if we unite in solidarity, we could always collectively force our government to do our bidding and ignore the bribes of the rich. Because if they don't, there is no society to rule. There is no production to survive for anybody. So there's revolution in the streets, bloody revolution too. And the next thing is about governments offshoring our jobs and shifting the tax burden to you and me. And they do that. But the thing people get mixed up in here is we don't need those offshore jobs back real quick. Our trade deficit can be a great thing. We don't need those offshore jobs. We don't need to toil in some factory making widgets for starvation wages. We just don't need to do it anymore. We get cheap imports. That's what our trade deficit does for us. And then it frees up our work to rebuild our crumbling communities all across America with a federally guaranteed living wage job program. So we don't need to chase offshore jobs. We have tons of work right now all over, and it's not getting done anywhere. All right. And it's essential to the general welfare. So we don't need to chase offshore jobs. Getting cheap imports is a great thing, and then it allows our workers to focus on society, raising everyone's standard of living with essential public services and goods like green sustainable energy and infrastructure and education and healthcare, you name it. So this is what the duopoly distracts from. This is what the duopoly tries to stop. It doesn't want our public purpose. So now you can understand why it would never want a Bernie in the race. It would much rather lose to a Trump than win with a Bernie. And that's why they would put Hillary in over a Bernie Sanders. That proves that they, do not represent us. And if we don't care about that kind of right-wing fascism, why are we opposing Trump to begin with? Why are you so afraid of Russians and Trump subverting our democracy and public purpose when our public servants have been subverting our democracy on a bipartisan basis from the 70s with our American oligarchs from the 70s? Like I said, that's the real problem. It doesn't matter if it's Trump or Obama in office. We're inflicting economic terror and police terror on everyone in America, but especially the minority communities and the bottom income distribution. We also inflict for-profit imperialism worldwide, causing more death and destruction worldwide, needlessly for profit, than any other civilization in the world. Hitler and the Nazis, the Romans, the Mongolian, no civilization in the world has spread as much death and destruction as America with our for-profit imperialism. It's just reality. And we don't want to focus on it. We want to have this, we want to be comfortable in our delusions and rationalizations. And we don't want to think about the systemic abuses. We want to be able to sleep easy at night and rationalize away all the brutality of our reality. We can't do that. We can't let people do that. All right. We have to remind them why we actually have a freaking government.